Show, don't tell. Every aspiring writer hears it, but I think if we hold too tightly to this, we lose the pacing and atmosphere of the world that we've created. If you're just beginning your writing journey, I think this is great advice because you naturally want to tell, but that doesn't mean that tell is bad per se, only that it is not as immersive just by default. But on the flip side, showing can actually leave an audience confused when you just drop them into a scene and have things happening.
The stereotypical example of showing versus telling, for those that don't know, is if a writer wants to show that someone is nervous. A telling way to say this is the man was nervous. A showing way of saying this is having the man tap his foot and having him wring his hands. The same message is pushed in both things, but one is more implied through the scene and one is told directly from the author. Showing and telling are both tools, and telling has been demonized, I think, unjustly so. Show, don't tell is not some mantra that you should live by 24/7 as a writer. Brandon Sanderson even ranks it as some of the worst advice that he's heard, and that it has so many asterisks that it's almost not helpful. As a good example of this, we broke down the first chapter of Red Rising. I broke every sentence down into one of three categories to kind of illustrate our point. 16% of the first chapter is dialogue, 22% is action/description, and then 62% is straight telling. More than half of the entire first chapter is telling. I think this shows that good books can be written even when you are breaking these rules. For example, here are some of the pros of telling. You can dump a lot of information really quickly, especially with these super complex worlds like with Red Rising, where you have all of these complex political structures, you have all of these different families and intertwining relationships. Showing all of that could have taken an entire book in and of itself when you could just say it in a few paragraphs. The second pro is that you can be direct and not lose things to nuance. Whenever you imply anything, there's a chance that your reader might not pick up on it. The third and last major pro is you can have immediacy and urgency. Showing takes many, many more words than telling does typically, and pacing is so important in a novel. Sometimes it's better to just say the thing and allow your pacing to continue that breakneck speed, like in a novel with Red Rising where the pace is always pumped up to 11.
And so that really leads into the cons of telling. It costs immersion. The author is essentially holding the hand of the reader. They lose that immersion and they lose the ability to infer in some sense about the world or about the themes that are going on in the story. Some people who do not enjoy Red Rising, a lot of the one-star reviews for the book, they're people that are getting bored with the telling in the early chapters, so they drop it because they don't feel as immersed as they want to be.
For a lot of authors, narrative is about setting up small things that are going to come to a head either in the inciting incident or in the large climax or even in small character arcs. Now, each of those dominoes has to be set up by a show or a tell. Going back to the first inciting incident of Red Rising, there are lots of dominoes that need to be set up for that inciting incident to happen. You have to understand the complex political structure. You have to understand the way that Darrow lives and the way that his people live. You have to understand all of these things before the inciting incident can have its power. Now, the two options that he had was either to show and spend 80,000 words showing all of these different things, or you could tell in the first 2 or 3 chapters and risk boring the readers, but allow for this huge explosion during the inciting incident.
So another way I like to think about show versus tell is to say it as demonstrate, don't explain. Think about demonstrating. How can I put the theme or the character motives in a scene rather than just telling the reader what it is I want them to get. Movies are a really good way to see examples for this. They are limiting in my opinion because movies and books, like we talked about with adaptations, they're just different mediums. Movies just by nature are going to be better at showing something because it's on a screen in front of your eyes. But the movie Up, the opening sequence with Carl and his wife, it does an amazing job of showing their relationship, and it just does a quick montage of their life and how close they are and how much they love each other. It hits you with all the different feelings in a span of like a minute or two. WALL-E is the same way. Instead of just telling us that there is a desolate planet and that robots are cleaning it up and having mindless chores to do, we get to see WALL-E in a day-to-day doing his chores and discovering different things. It's really cool, really immersive. I find that most of the showing is very effective when you open with it, which is interesting because Red Rising has a lot of tells to really set up its world, and it's probably just the nature of the actual genre that these things are set in. Something like a movie or like a Pixar movie, like I said, those don't have to do world building setups as much as something like a sci-fi novel does. Now in books, think about Katniss. She's hunting to survive and figuring out how she can eat. And it does a really good way of showing that they live in this society that struggles and that survival is not guaranteed. In Harry Potter, think about in the beginning, the Dursleys just being mean to Harry. It could have very easily just said that the family was mean, but they do really good effective shows. Dudley, for instance, will jump on the stairs to disrupt Harry, who's in the cupboard underneath the stairs.
And now to move into how to properly tell, because there are good ways to tell and there are bad ways to tell. We're going to jump into different ways that you can make your telling more interesting. The first one is basically to layer them within character voice or narrator voice. One of the risks of telling is sometimes it feels like the author is talking directly to the reader, and it sounds like they're just giving a speech, and it can feel really boring. You have to hide these tells, and a good way to hide it is to layer it beneath character voice. In the first chapter of Red Rising, most of these tells is a thick voice behind Darrow, showing his animosity to different political structures, showing his disdain for certain people and his relationships, and all of these things almost hide the tell, and you are learning things about his character while you are learning things about the world.
The Martian is a really good example. It just opens with Mark Watney saying that he's screwed, that he's in a bad way, and he'll go on to explain the problem and how he wants to solve it. Andy Weir gets away with this because Mark Watney has a really distinct voice about him, and it's really entertaining to watch him work through his problems and try to figure out how he's gonna get through it.
The second way to make tells more powerful is to give it another purpose. If the reader thinks that the tell is for one purpose, they almost don't even realize that they're being given knowledge. For example, you can have a tell in the form of a joke, and it will almost go unnoticed and under the radar that this tell is happening because the reader is laughing at the joke, and then they happen to learn all of these things about the world.
Arrested Development came to mind for this. The narrator frequently will open the episodes or jump in throughout the episodes and sort of explain to the audience what's going on or what should happen. But it's done in such a way that the narrator is so starkly different from the characters that he almost becomes the punchline for the characters. So he sets them up in a way. And it's so funny to watch him explain something and then the characters do the opposite thing.
The third way to make tells much better is understanding when you have the attention of the audience and when you don't. One of the things that we mentioned before about telling is it costs immersion and it costs attention. But if you have already steeped your readers into this immersive world that they can't get enough of, they will definitely take a few tells to make things quicken up the pace, and they might not even notice. Telling stories are like a push and pull of immersion and information, and if you can find that balance, your stories will both be immersive and keep that pacing by having those tells.
One of my favorite examples of earning your tell is in the book East of Eden, classic novel by John Steinbeck. He has loads of tells throughout the book, mainly regarding character work. What's so amazing though, and what keeps you actually immersed in his tells, is that he has loads of description and details about the world, about the characters, and it just really helps your mind as he's just dripping information to you that would just be regular information about if a person's happy or sad. He does a good job of describing the scene while he's doing so. And not only that, he will then essentially back up what he said about the character by showing these things play out in the scene. A lot of his chapters will open as an omnipotent narration and really set the scene for you. And that's where you get all those descriptions. And then it'll sort of jump into more of a limited POV with the characters that it's focusing on. And you really see the moral or the theme come out clearly. A really good example text I wanted to read from the book. Kate was a sick ghost, crooked and in some way horrible. She leaned against the dining room wall and smiled at her girls. And her smile frightened them even more, for it was like the frame for a scream. So you'll notice that there were two wases in there, and so he's just telling you what it is. It just jumps into, this is what Kate was, and this is how people reacted to her. And then it'll go on to tell you, just again, that this is a bit of a menacing figure and that people don't really like her presence, and it's really effective.
All this to say, I think show, don't tell is interesting to talk about, but I think as a rule, it falls short in a lot of different ways. Both show and tell are both great tools, and an incredible author will use those tools to the best of their ability for the situations that require each of them. Don't let yourself be weighed down by these rules that only make your stories worse. Use the tools that you have at your disposal and make great stories because of it.
So again, when it comes to showing and telling, think about the demonstrate, don't explain idea. Showing is very powerful and very immersive, as we've been talking about. But just don't forget that telling can really set scenes as well. I also realize that the genre can oftentimes dictate whether you're going to show or tell more. I think that some genres get more leniency in one or the other. And even like right now with fantasy, I think they're leaning so hard into the show bit that everyone gets really hung up on telling because they think you're just building out a world without any characters or story. So I would say that don't abandon tell altogether if you're in the sci-fi or fantasy genre. Just know that the norms are there and let that encourage you to potentially break out of them and try something new where you can do some tells and set up a theme. So hopefully this is helpful in getting you in a more nuanced position when you write between showing and telling, and overall makes you a stronger writer. So that'll do it from us. We will see you next time.
Hey guys, if you really like this video, check the one down below. You might like that one too.
And if you really like what you see, click here to subscribe.